Not enough. Okay, we're going to call our meeting to order, and the next thing is roll call, and it will be a individual call. Let's see. Mike Bradley.
Here.
John Waller.
Present.
Steve Wageman.
I'm present, but I'm going to recuse myself from this proceeding, so I will step down into the audience.
Okay. Pat Preiner is here, and Marcy Winan is not here. She's absent with prior notice. So the next thing we'll do is start our hearing. This evening we are reconvening the public hearing on the proposed reestablishment and correction of the drainage system records for portions of Anoka County Ditch 10-2232 under statutes number 103E 101 subdivision 4A. The board held the first hearing in this matter on June 9, 2021, and after receiving comment, decided to reopen the proceedings for the purpose of gathering and reviewing additional evidence and public comment in the proceedings. I would like to welcome everyone who has come to this evening. Under consideration at this hearing is the reestablishment and correction of the drainage system records for Anoka County Ditch 10-2232. I highlight that these proceedings address only portions of Anoka County Ditch 10-2232 records because by prior action of the board under Resolution 2010-09, the board adopted and reestablished a functional alignment, dimension, and grade of the drainage system. That prior action focused primarily on portions of the systems located south of Pine Street and north of Martian Lake. These proceedings are focused on the portions of the system located north of Pine Street and are based on a more detailed analysis of this area than that was available at the prior proceedings. The board directed the additional analysis in order to define the alignment, cross-section, profile, hydraulic structures, locations, materials, dimensions, and elevations, and the right-of-way of the system in the area under consideration. Any decision resulting from these proceedings will be added to the current record defining the as-constructed condition of the drainage system. The purpose of this hearing is to review the engineer's investigation and report the findings and receive comments from those affected by the proposed reestablishment and corrections of the public drainage record. The records and comments considered and analyzed by the board and its engineer are substantial. A list of the materials considered in these proceedings has been provided and is available to all in attendance this evening. The list will also be incorporated into any findings of proceedings. This is an evidentiary hearing proceeding. The proceedings are being recorded in order to preserve the record. The order of business for this hearing will be as follows. First, Mr. Schmidt, the district's drainage inspector, will introduce a presentation of information related to these proceedings, including the engineer's report of finding. Mr. Schmidt will be assisted by Mr. Kolb, the district's legal counsel, and Mr. Otterness, the district engineer. Following the staff presentation, I will open the hearing for public comment. The board will like to hear your comments on the proposed reestablishment and correction of the drainage system records and any information relevant to its purpose. Specifically, the board is interested in whether it is missing information used to define the public drainage system, whether the recommended alignment, grade, or configuration of the ditch creates concerns about loss of drainage benefit, whether and how your land drains to the public system, whether you have concerns on issues associated with the alignment of the public system crossing your property. During the public hearing, managers may ask questions of staff or consultants making presentations and commenters in order to clarify any testimony. In addition, if a member of the public asks a question and a manager believes that the response from the district staff or district consultant can readily resolve the question or enrich the testimony, the manager may ask me to have the appropriate staff member or consultant speak to the question. I will exercise my judgment as to whether to allow such discussion. Managers' expression of their positions and general discussion concerning the subject of the public hearing should be avoided during the public comment portion of the public hearing. Board discussion will allow for all the members of the public to have a chance to speak, and the public comment period has been closed. Board discussions may occur and be concluded at this or a subsequent meeting of the board whenever the board decides. During the public comment portion of the hearing, I will call for comments. When you are recognized and invited to speak, please come to the podium to make your comments. Please speak clearly and state your name and address for the record before making your comments. If you have specific questions concerning the proposed reestablishment and correction of the public drainage system record, you may ask our administrator, engineer, or legal counsel to respond. If you have anything in writing that you wish to submit, you may present this item, and I will note it in this record. To ensure that all wishing to make comments have time to speak, I may limit the time to any single speaker. Okay, any of the board members wish to offer remarks before we begin? Anybody? Okay. There are no comments. We're going to start with Mr. Schmidt.
Okay, Madam President, thank you. First, I'd like to acknowledge President Preiner, who is the Anoka County representative, and Steve Wagaman, who's a Anoka County representative, but he's in the audience now, and Manager Mike Bradley, who's online, and then Manager John Waller, who is from Washington County. Chris Otterness, who is the district engineer. John Kolb, who is district legal counsel. Nick Tomshek, who's our district administrator. Katie Hembry, who's our district field person. And then I'm the Public Drainage Inspector, Tom Schmidt. So first of all, Chris Otterness, the district engineer, will give a presentation on the proceedings to this evening.
Thank you. Madam President, I think Attorney Kolb
sorry.
will begin with the...
Kolb will read into the record the noticing
The
for
notices.
that we did for this meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt. Madam President, members of the board, members of the public, just for the record, the following notices were provided for this hearing this evening. A published notice was made in the St. Paul Pioneer Press newspaper on March 21st, 28th, and April 6th of this year. Also, a notice was published in the Life newspaper on March 18th, the Forest Lake Times newspaper on March 17th. There was a postcard notice provided to the owners of property within the sub-watershed of Anoka County Ditch 10-2232, which was mailed on March 15th, 2022. We also mailed notice to the cities of Blaine, Columbus, and Lino Lakes, Anoka County, the Anoka County Engineer, and the Anoka Conservation District on March 15th, 2022. Notice was posted on the district's website and provided by email notice to those requesting such notice on March 14th, 2022. Notice of the hearing was also posted at the office of the Watershed District commencing on March 15th, 2022 and remaining posted through the date of tonight's hearing. We also provided notice and the historical review prepared by the engineer dated January 18th, 2021. We provided those by mail to the DNR, the Board of Water and Soil Resources, and the Army Corps of Engineers on March 15th. And we also sent the updated notices to those entities on March 14th and mailed those notices to the DNR Region 3 drainage portal noticing address on March 14th, 2022. That completes the notices that were provided for the hearing this evening.
Okay. Good.
Thanks, Madam President, Board of Managers. I'm going to provide a presentation here regarding the reestablishment of the public drainage system record for Anoka County Ditch 10-2232. This presentation is very similar to the one that I provided at the prior public hearing on June 9th, 2021, except I've added now some additional information that we've had since that point. But bear with me, there's going to be a lot repeated here from the prior public hearing, but for completeness, I've included the prior information here. So this presentation is going to do a couple different things. One, it will define and describe what that as constructed and subsequently improved condition, or what we refer to as the ASIC of the public drainage system. And then we're going to describe how we determined that ASIC and describe what we have learned from additional information since the prior public hearing in June of last year. Again, No County Ditch 102232 is a public drainage system that flows generally from north to south through the southern portion of Columbus and down into Lino Lakes where it outlets into Marshan Lake. The report and the current proceeding that we're working on is intended to provide evidence that the district can utilize to manage the drainage system. And essentially, we're trying to reestablish those records so we have a complete record on the drainage system to determine that as constructed, subsequently improved condition. And right now, we're focused solely on that portion of the drainage system that is in Columbus, that area that is north of Pine Street, which I have on this graphic here circled in yellow. The legal standard for the hearings, these are right out of Minnesota Statute 103-101 Subdivision 4A. It says, if after investigation of the drainage system record, the drainage authority that finds that records are lost, destroyed, or otherwise incomplete and made by order reestablished records, and that the reestablished records may define the alignment, cross-section profile, hydraulic structure locations, materials dimensions and elevations, or right-of-way of the drainage system as originally constructed or subsequently improved. So as I've alluded to already here, the purpose of reestablishing these records is to have that collective record with which the drainage authority may be able to manage the drainage system. And that is due to the fact that over the course of history, there's been a lot of records that have been lost along the way. And we need to provide clarity on this historic record so we can identify what the greatest evidence is of that as constructed condition. And as I mentioned here, that includes the alignment of the system, the profile, the cross-section of the drainage system, and a right-of-way. And this as constructed condition serves as the baseline for future maintenance and modifications. And what I mean by that is this is the elevation with which the drainage authority knows that it cannot excavate or go to greater than that. Otherwise, it turns into something that is other than a repair, what could potentially be considered an improvement. So the background on these records, back in 2010, the district did complete an investigation of the historic records of multiple drainage systems referred to prior to this as ACD 10, ACD 22, and ACD 32. And at this time, it was actually working underneath statutes that are a different statute than what currently exists for the reestablishment of records. Again, that 103E 101 Subdivision 4A. So this is prior to the development of that statute, which identified this process that we're working under now. So as such, the as constructed subsequently improved condition wasn't identified at that time. Instead, the district did identify and apply the system management with regard to what we called a functional alignment, which was used to determine what the equivalent equivalent function would be to the as constructed condition. And part of the reason why we looked at this functional alignment was how much the drainage system, and specifically that area south of Pine Street, how heavily modified it was compared to its original condition. But again, the focus of that effort was primarily on that area that's south of Pine Street at that time. As the district's completed repair activities over the last 10 to 12 years, the historic bottom of the drainage system, as we've completed as-built of the maintenance efforts, has been identified as being lower than that functional grade in some locations. And in particular, it was found to be lower in that area that is north of Pine Street. We did identify that in this area there's been a lot less modification in terms of alignment of the drainage system than there was on that area south of Pine Street. And that has a lot to do with why this historic bottom was lower than that functional grade. In October 2020, the Watershed District requested Houston Engineering to prepare a review of that as constructed and subsequently improved condition for that area north of Pine Street, again, based on the fact that we have identified that the historic ditch bottom was lower than that previous functional profile. So in order to complete this review, we completed a field survey in October of 2020. We took a number of soil borings and probes of the drainage system along the main trunk, branch 4 and branch 4A. These are portions of the drainage system that are located north of Pine Street. And then what we did was take these borings that we completed out in the field along with survey elevations of the current channel bottom and compared those to the historic plans from 1894 and 1898 when No County Ditch 22 and No County Ditch 32 were originally established. And we determined then the as constructed grade by looking at that historic plan grade and comparing that to the soil borings and seeing if we could find a correlation between the two. And there's one portion of the drainage system we did find a good correlation, one portion where we found very little correlation between the soil borings and that historic plan grade from 1894 and 1898. Then we also completed additional survey of the drainage system in April of 2021 at the location of the northern natural gas pipeline where it crosses the main trunk of No County Ditch 102232 just to the east of Joe Drell Street. So in addition to that information we completed in 2020 and early 2021, we had a number of events that followed that since the time of the prior public hearing on June 9th, 2021. So we did complete our engineer's report prior to the public hearing and then had that June 9th public hearing. On July 29th, the Board of Managers reopened the proceeding to allow for submission of additional relevant information related to the historic drainage system record. Then on October 1st, the Houston Engineering completed a review of the additional documents that were provided in that additional reopening of the proceeding. On October 11th of 2021, this information or documentation was presented to the Board of Managers at a board workshop. And at that time, the Board of Managers requested the engineer to complete additional field investigation at one particular location on the drainage system, which was just east of Joe Drell Street, approximately 500 feet. And this was due to the fact that there was a location in there where the soil borings, there was a spacing in there and question about the profile in that particular location. So we did complete in the fall then some additional field investigation, which I'll talk about in a minute here. And based on the information, we prepared an addendum to the engineer's report on January 13th of 2022, which provided an adjustment to that as constructed grade in that area near Joe Drell Street based on that additional information. So I'll talk a little bit about this additional field investigation that was completed. We contracted with Scandia Trucking to come out with an excavator and excavate a test pit, which is essentially a cross-section across the ditch that was observed by both Houston Engineering and Rice Creek staff. The purpose of this test pit is to be able to take a look at the soil horizon across the ditch to get a better view at that particular location of how closely the bottom of the current ditch relates to the alignment of the bottom of the historic ditch and be able to see what the level of accuracy in the borings that we've completed to date, how they would be. So we did complete that test pit. The example of the test pit is shown in the lower right-hand corner of the screen here. On that test pit, you can see the distinction between the native soil materials that are shown in gray at the bottom part of the photo, and comparing that with the built-up organic sediment that is, you can see in a darker brown color above that original gray soil horizon. And so in this particular photo, you can see that there's approximately 1.1, 1.2 feet of accumulated organic sediment that is built up in the ditch at this particular location. So in addition to that test pit and the survey, we also completed 8 additional soil borings in this location near Jodrell Street. And then we took that information and plotted it on our prior profiles that we've prepared to see how well the information corresponds to the as constructed and subsequent improved condition grade that we had determined previously. And what we concluded based on that field investigation is that the soil borings, they are relatively consistent in grade in that area that we completed those additional borings. That test pit did indicate that as constructed channel is in alignment with the observed channel bottom at the surface. So there hasn't been a shift in that alignment. So we believe that these additional borings we completed are fairly accurate to determine that original channel bottom. And what we further determined was, based on those additional 8 borings, that we could add additional precision in our as constructed channel bottom by lowering the grade on our profiles by a half a foot compared to what we had previously determined in our engineer's report back in May of 2021. That is what our recommendation was within our subsequent addendum to our engineer's report that we prepared in January. Here's a graphic showing that difference. In the graphic, there is a solid black line, and I don't know if, hopefully my cursor will be able to show up on the screen here, or maybe not.
We can see it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
They can see.
So the black line shown on here is that profile that we had determined in our original determination in May of 2021. And the red line that we have shown in here is the adjusted elevation or profile of the drainage system by lowering it a half a foot at Jodrell Street based on these borings that we completed in the fall of 2021. Those borings are shown as these red markers on the screen here, and you can see that our as constructed grade follows fairly closely with these soil borings that we took along here, relatively speaking. So I'll talk a little bit about what we've determined overall between our original engineer's report from May 2021 and our subsequent addendum. Showing here now on the screen the portion of Nook County Ditch 102232 just to the north of Pine Street, the main trunk. A couple of things I can point out on the screen here. On the left-hand side, we have the culvert at Pine Street, and you can see that culvert at Pine Street is substantially higher, nearly 2 feet higher than the as-constructed grade at that location. We show on here the Coke pipeline that is crossing the public drainage system a little bit further to the north. And if you get further north than that, we can see 137th Avenue, where there's also another culvert there, which is, I believe, a little over 1.5 feet above the as-constructed grade of the drainage system. Moving a little further upstream in the portion of the main trunk that flows from east to west. On the left-hand side of the screen, you see Jodrell Street, and Jodrell Street is, I believe, about 1.5 feet above that original channel bottom in that location. The northern natural gas pipeline crossing that is located a little further to the east of Jodrell Street. And then there's also a field crossing that we have shown on here that is closer to the very upstream end of the drainage system. And that field crossing, since the time of our survey out there, has been lowered. And then moving on to branch 4 and 4A, these are a little further to the east from the main trunk crossing of Pine Street. As we look to the north here, we again show the Pine Street crossing on the map here. I'll point out that the Coke pipeline also crosses the public drainage system in this location also. So we have pointed out on the drawing here. And then we also pointed on here approximate location of a sheet piling that was temporarily installed across the drainage system here, and that's the subject of a wetland replacement plan that has been applied for to be able to allow for the removal of that sheet piling. So our conclusions are that the as constructed, subsequently improved condition of the drainage system on Pine Street is substantially different and generally lower than the functional grade that was identified in the previous consolidation hearing for the 10, 22, and 32 drainage systems from back in 2010. So we do recommend that findings and order be issued to correct the public drainage system record. And we continue to recommend additional coordination with the DNR and pipeline companies regarding additional activities to maintain the drainage system. And with that, I can address any questions right now from the board if you have any for me.
Any questions from the board? John? Mr. Bradley? Any questions? Well, hearing no questions, we'll move on, and it'll become the next thing. Oh, Mike, did you have any questions?
I didn't say I was muted. My answer was, thank you, I had no questions, Madam
Okay.
President.
All right, thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the. What's that, Tim? Oh, okay, Mr. Olson?
I think that's the cursor.
Oh. All right. So still seeing none, we will go to the public. Is there anybody in the public that'd like to comment or make comment to the board? Anybody in the public that'd like to speak tonight? Anybody in the public like to speak? Okay, hearing none. We'll continue on. I'm just wondering if any of the people nobody out there wants to speak. I want to make sure for the record. Okay, well, with that, we'll go ahead and, let's see, being no further testimony from the public. Oh, wait a minute, we did receive a letter that needs to be put into the minutes.
Yes, President Preiner, Board of Managers, you are correct. The district office did receive a document. I'll read it into the record. Document is dated 4/9/2022. Rice Creek Watershed, public hearing. I fully understand that you need to certify the as-constructed profile of ditch number 102232. However, I am finding it hard to convince myself that the engineering is done properly and that there is a sincere desire to provide drainage for me for some reasons that I would like on the record. Number one, after receiving the original engineering report, Rice Creek requested engineering that would require no mitigation. Houston Engineering provided it while doing no field work and simply picking elevations that limit the drainage. Number two, next, I believe just to pacify me a little bit, they lowered the culvert 11 inches on Jodrell. It should have been obvious that it wouldn't help. Number three, then came what they called the functional profile, which pretty much matched the original profile that was designed to not drain water. Who was it supposed to function? Who was it supposed to be functional for? Number four, even after I had been there and told the administrator that the pipeline was holding back 2 feet of water, it took years and years to remove 2.5 feet of excess sand that was in the ditch covering the pipeline while my property was being destroyed. Number five, I can think of no reason why there should be a culvert designed to control the flow in the ditch under a road that didn't exist when the ditch was constructed. I could be wrong, but it seems to me that the phrase, as constructed, was intended to be some type of warranty that the ditch profile would remain consistent. I can think of no other situation where the words subsequently improved, could be used to destroy a warranty. I could go on and on, however, these few things come to mind, and I would like them read into and remain on the record so it can be understood why I am a bit dubious about the as constructed. Perry Wagman, signed as such, address 13640 Zodiac Street, Lino Lakes, Minnesota 55014.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else that needs to go? We have no further testimony, no further documents, correct? Okay, with that, we're going to go ahead and close our portion of the hearing, and we'll ask the board to discuss regarding that guidance to the staff. What we would like the staff to do at this point.
Madam President,
Mhm.
I'll move that the board direct the staff to prepare findings and an order consistent with proceedings, that the draft findings and order be written to effect the reestablishment and correction of public drainage systems record consistent with the engineer's findings, and that we recess this hearing to the board's regular meeting on May 11th, 2022 at 9 a.m. or by adjournment to an appropriate time on the board's agenda, at which meeting we would consider findings and an order for the proposed reestablishment and correction of the public drainage systems record.
Madam President, I will second that motion.
We have a motion by Manager Waller and second by Manager Bradley. Any further discussion?
Madam President, I have no further discussion.
Okay,
Madam President, I would just like to acknowledge Perry Wagaman's concerns and state that as a result of those concerns, we've took the relook that we did. The very reason we're here tonight was trying to verify whether we were doing the right job, and I believe at this time we have. Thank you.
Madam President,
Go ahead.
Thank you, Manager Bradley. It reminded me to be certain that all the attendants in the audience have signed in. I signed in myself, and I was number one, so I don't know if anyone has signed after me. So if you're attending the public hearing, please sign the public hearing attendance record.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Be a roll call. Manager Waller,
Yes?
Manager Bradley,
Yes,
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. Okay,
Madam President, I move that we adjourn until the appropriate time,
May 11th.
May 11th.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Oh, that motion is second with Manager Bradley. Any further discussion? Okay, Manager Waller,
Yes.
Manager Bradley,
Yes.
and Manager Priner, yes. Motion passes. We are adjourned. Thank you to the audience.